Terence McKenna, one of the most provocative voices of the 20th century, suggested that something extraordinary occurred in the human mind around 100,000 years ago, an abrupt and profound shift that still challenges any conventional evolutionary explanation. In just a few thousand generations, the human brain almost doubled in size. No other species has experienced such rapid transformation. But this wasn't purely about brain volume. Along with that growth came enhanced abilities, refined intelligence, faster reflexes, sharper vision, and most astonishing of all, consciousness. Consciousness, that intangible phenomenon that allows us to ask about our origins, ponder death, and contemplate the universe itself. Traditional science has yet to explain how this evolutionary leap occurred, and then McKenna arrived on the scene. An ethnobotanist, not a mainstream scientist, he proposed something both simple and revolutionary. The spark of human awakening wasn't fire, nor language, nor tools. It was something far more humble, something that grows in the shadows, on dung, and has been pursued and revered for millennia. Mushrooms. But not just any mushrooms. Magic mushrooms, psilocybin. The food that, according to McKenna, not only altered perception, but unlocked the gates of the mind. This may sound extraordinary, but it isn't baseless. These claims rest upon patterns that archaeology and modern neuroscience are only beginning to unravel, with amazement and resistance. In this video, we will explore his theory and the surrounding mysteries, from scientific experiments to ancient rituals. We will see how cultures across the globe shared an intuition. These mushrooms were more than food. They were a spiritual technology. Throughout history, mushrooms have been feared, worshipped, outlawed, and rediscovered. They appear in mythologies, shamanic rites, and healing traditions across continents. Their presence whispers of a deeper relationship between nature and mind, one we've only begun to remember. Perhaps, as McKenna hinted, it wasn't humans who discovered mushrooms, but mushrooms that discovered humans. Terence McKenna wasn't your average scientist. He didn't wear a lab coat or spend his days calculating formulas behind locked doors. He was an outsider, an explorer of invisible realities. His journey began as an ethnobotanist in the Amazon rainforest, where he studied plants deemed sacred by indigenous cultures. But everything changed in 1971 when he visited La Chorrera, Colombia. There, McKenna encountered psilocybin mushrooms for the first time. What he experienced wasn't mere hallucination, it was revelation. A vision so profound it drove him to devote his life to one singular pursuit: understanding human consciousness. And as McKenna often said, when the inner world opens, no conventional explanation is enough. He didn't speak from imagination alone. In 1970, a Harvard researcher named Roland Fischer conducted a landmark experiment. He gave psilocybin to students, and their vision improved drastically. Sharper detail, better contrast, faster motion tracking, up to 200% more visual acuity. Their discoveries planted a seed of skepticism in mainstream academia. Experimentation with psychotropic substances was taboo, yet compelling data continued to emerge. Data that questioned long-held beliefs about brain development, culture, and human potential. Now, imagine this effect on early humans. Better vision meant more effective hunting. Better hunting meant more food. And more food, bigger brains. But McKenna didn't stop there. He proposed 3 levels of mushroom use. Low doses enhanced vision and alertness, ideal for stalking prey across the African savanna. Medium doses dissolved social boundaries and boosted empathy. Group bonding increased, cohesion thrived, reproduction followed. High doses obliterated the ego. New patterns of thought emerged. Symbolism became natural. Language morphed into melody and music into meaning. And consciousness, whatever it truly is, expanded. McKenna emphasized that this was no isolated phenomenon. He referenced archaeological hints of communal mushroom gatherings, suggesting that collective experiences could have reinforced social structures in early communities. To McKenna, this wasn't random. It was part of an evolutionary design. What he offered wasn't just theory. It was an invitation to reconsider the story of our beginnings, to explore whether evolution might also unfold in spirit, not just flesh. His main concern: the speed of our brain's development. 2 million years ago, our ancestors had brains around 900 cubic centimeters. Within just 100,000 years, that number nearly doubled to 1,600. That kind of leap should have taken millions of years. Science points to fire, tools, meat. But all those arrived after the brain had already grown. McKenna offered a strange, elegant alternative. Early humans followed game across the plains. Animals left dung. Mushrooms grew in it, and humans ate them. Critics dismissed the idea as fanciful, but recent evidence has forced a re-evaluation. Brain imaging studies reveal long-term changes in empathy, creativity, and emotional resilience that echo McKenna's original insights. The theory was mocked, dubbed the Stoned Ape Hypothesis. But McKenna didn't retreat. He believed psilocybin didn't merely alter minds. It shaped experience. It modeled culture. It ignited the soul. Decades later, brain scans and clinical studies began saying the unthinkable. Maybe, just maybe, Terence McKenna was right. Terence McKenna often said that mushrooms do more than alter perception. They open doors that science is only just beginning to notice. And decades later, that intuition was confirmed in advanced laboratories. When neuroscientists finally scanned volunteers with MRI and administered psilocybin, they expected a surge of brain activity. More neural firing, more stimuli, more chaos. But the opposite happened. Instead of hyperactivity, the brain calmed. In particular, one crucial area quietened: the default mode network. This region is the control center of our mind. It is the voice that says I, the axis of ego, identity, and the boundary between self and world. It is the invisible mirror reminding us who we think we are. Under the influence of mushrooms, that mirror shatters. Not slightly, not momentarily. The network turns off completely. And when that I dissolves, something extraordinary unfolds. Regions of the brain that never communicate begin to interconnect. The visual cortex converses with emotional centers. Memories link to bodily awareness. It is as though every isolated neighborhood in a city suddenly built roads to all others. These connections not only enhance sensory experience, but also activate latent mental functions. It is like a brain freed from its usual confines, revealing abilities that were always there, dormant, awaiting the correct chemical spark. Many users describe the experience as a mental symphony, emotions, imagery, memory all weaving together in unfamiliar yet deeply resonant patterns. Many participants describe this change as an awakening, not merely enhanced perception, but an emotional expansion that reconnects them with both self and other in novel, unforeseen ways. In 2012, neuroscientist Robin Carhart-Harris at Imperial College London documented this phenomenon. He called it neural anarchy. But it was not chaos in the negative sense. It was reorganization, a new mental map emerging from the ashes of ego. Most strikingly, those new connections do not vanish once the mushroom's effect wears off. MRI scans show that new neural pathways remain active for weeks, even months. In some cases, changes appear permanent. These profound changes in connectivity suggest potential for long-term personal growth and emotional resilience, beyond short-lived experiential highs. And it is not just thought that changes, it is personality. Researchers at Johns Hopkins University found that individuals given psilocybin in clinical settings showed lasting transformations. They became more open, creative, and emotionally connected. This is not simply having a good day. It is a profound reprogramming of self. By traditional science, this seems impossible. Personality is thought to be stable by the age of 30, but mushrooms rewrote that rule. As a result, interest in psilocybin as therapeutic medicine and tool for consciousness exploration has surged internationally. What is more, psilocin, the active metabolite of psilocybin, fits into serotonin receptors with surgical precision, like a key crafted for one very specific lock. Coincidence? Not according to Paul Stamets. This visionary mycologist asserts that humans and mushrooms have co-evolved over millennia. McKenna hinted at the same. Mushrooms do more than affect us. They understand us. Ancient cultures knew this without MRI machines or labs. To them, these mushrooms were sacred technology, bridges between worlds, voices of ancestors, whispers of gods. Terence McKenna insisted that psychedelic mushrooms were more than mere fungi. They were ancient technologies, encoded wisdom in living form. These living forms carried more than spores. They held encoded memories. For cultures attuned to nature, these fungi were teachers, guides. They whispered truths not written in books, truths only accessible through inner vision and ceremonial reverence. Though his words sounded radical, history seems to validate his intuition. For over 2,000 years, Greece concealed a profound secret, the Eleusinian mysteries. Every September, thousands, farmers and emperors alike, philosophers and warriors, would journey to Eleusis to drink the kykeon, a sacred potion promising revelation. Plato drank it, Aristotle too. So too did Sophocles, Cicero, Emperor Marcus Aurelius, and even Emperor Commodus. None ever revealed specifically what they experienced, but all agreed on one thing. The vision transformed them forever. They claimed to have understood death and glimpsed their place in the cosmos. For centuries, the kykeon's ingredients remained unknown, until 1978, when researchers discovered it contained ergot, a fungus that grows on rye and produces lysergic acid amide, a naturally occurring psychedelic cousin of LSD. But the Greeks weren't the only ones. In Mesoamerica, the Aztecs called mushrooms teonanacatl, the flesh of gods. They used Psilocybin mexicana in sacred ceremonies. When Spanish conquistadors witnessed these rituals in the 16th century, they were horrified. Entire communities consumed mushrooms and spoke directly with their gods. No priests, no temples, no hierarchies. The response was brutal. Temples were razed, codices were burned, and mushroom use was made punishable by death. Yet, it was impossible to eradicate completely. The Mazatec people of Oaxaca preserved the sacred ceremonies for 4 centuries in hidden mountain caves. Knowledge passed clandestinely from one healer to another, a persistent flame against eradication. And this is not a story exclusive to the Americas. Ancient Vedic texts from India describe a divine elixir called soma, said to grant immortality and wisdom. Its identity remained a mystery for centuries, until R. Gordon Wasson, the same man who later rediscovered María Sabina, proposed it was the red and white beloved Amanita muscaria, familiar from folklore. Even the Siberian shamans believed in its power. They fed the mushroom to reindeer, then consumed the reindeer's urine, filtered of toxins, yet potent in active compounds. They spoke of flying across the sky, visiting other worlds. Remarkably, even the Bible may contain mushroom references. When Moses spoke to God from within the burning bush, might it have been an acacia tree containing DMT, the powerful psychedelic? Burning and inhaling it causes approximately 15 minutes of vision. Coincidentally, the very length of Moses' encounter and the manna that sustained Israel in the desert. It appeared overnight, caused visions, required gathering before dawn. Behavior eerily reminiscent of psychedelic fungi. John Marco Allegro, a scholar of the Dead Sea Scrolls, proposed something extraordinarily controversial. Early Christianity was a psychedelic cult. He suggested the Last Supper was not bread and wine, but mushrooms. He claimed the body and blood of Christ referred to the cap and stem of Amanita muscaria. Predictably, the Vatican destroyed his career, yet his provocative idea continued to circulate. Today, as the stigma fades and research resurfaces, his theory is no longer just dismissed. It lingers, quietly influencing thinkers, scientists, and seekers who sense that ancient knowledge was never truly lost, only silenced. Terence McKenna was aware. Every civilization that encountered mushrooms regarded them as sacred, and every regime that rose to power worked to obliterate that sacred knowledge. Terence McKenna believed that psychedelic mushrooms didn't just awaken human consciousness in the distant past. They were still guiding us towards expanded states of awareness in the present. And as if the universe conspired to prove him right, history began to align with his vision. In 1955, a New York banker, R. Gordon Wasson, then vice president of J.P. Morgan, unexpectedly became the catalyst for a spiritual renaissance. Alongside his wife Valentina, he traveled to Oaxaca, Mexico, intrigued by rumors of mushroom rituals that had somehow survived the Spanish conquest. There, they met María Sabina, a Mazatec curandera whose family had protected sacred mushroom knowledge for generations. This knowledge was as ancient as language, as powerful as fire. She rarely allowed outsiders into her ceremonies, but something about the Wassons moved her deeply. On the night of June 29, 1955, Gordon Wasson became the first known Westerner to participate in a traditional Mazatec mushroom ceremony. María Sabina placed Psilocybin mexicana on a leaf, chanting in Mazatec as the scent of copal incense filled the room. Then came the visions. Wasson saw living geometries, palaces made of light. He felt his soul leave his body. And for the first time, he truly understood the meaning of the word ecstasy. Not joy, but standing outside oneself, seeing the universe from an expanded state of awareness. The experience transformed him. 2 years later, Life magazine published his account under the title Seeking the Magic Mushroom. 6 million people read about a food that could expand the mind and reveal cosmic truths. The impact was seismic. This article didn't just inform, it inspired a movement. Across college campuses, art studios, and underground communities, people began to seek what Wasson had experienced. Not as a trend, but as a reconnection with something ancient. The mushroom wasn't just a substance, It was a symbol of a deeper truth waiting to be remembered. Many felt a spiritual renaissance had begun, a spark of hope amid societal tension. This surge of interest ignited conversations about healing, purpose, and the limits of Western medicine. Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert, later known as Ram Dass, read that article. In 1960, they launched the Harvard Psilocybin Project, administering mushrooms to students, inmates, and spiritual seekers. The testimonies were consistent: encounters with the divine, a sense of oneness, deep inner transformation. Then came the Good Friday experiment. On April 20th, 1962, 20 theology students gathered at Marsh Chapel, Boston University. Half received psilocybin, the other half a placebo. 9 out of 10 who took psilocybin described a mystical experience that redefined their lives. 25 years later, most of them still ranked that single day as one of the most spiritually significant moments of their lives. But institutional fear arrived quickly. In 1968, psilocybin was made illegal. Research came to a halt. The psychedelic renaissance appeared to be over. Underneath the surface, underground therapists kept the flame alive, treating trauma, addiction, PTSD, quietly building evidence, awaiting the moment science would catch up. Then, in 2006, Johns Hopkins University broke the silence with the first legal psilocybin study in over 40 years. A single journey was enough to produce lasting positive personality changes, greater openness, creativity, empathy. By 2018, the FDA had designated psilocybin as a breakthrough therapy for depression. Clinical trials showed a 70% remission rate compared to just 30% for standard antidepressants. Terminal cancer patients lost their fear of death. Addictions dropped. PTSD symptoms faded. Today, those same compounds are rediscovered, not as recreational drugs, but as profound catalysts for awakening renewed human consciousness. The very mushrooms that, according to McKenna, sparked our awakening 100,000 years ago are awakening us once again. The Stoned Ape hypothesis, as posited by Terence McKenna, captivated millions. A bold, elegant theory. Magic mushrooms made us human. For the first time, someone dared offer a radical answer to humanity's oldest mystery: how consciousness was born. How did we evolve from instinct to introspection, from survival to spirituality? Yet there is a fundamental flaw. Biological evolution does not operate this way. Yes, we know that psilocybin mushrooms enhance vision. Roland Fischer's Harvard experiments showed as much. They increase empathy, dissolve ego boundaries, and forge new neural pathways. Modern brain imaging confirms this. We also know that our ancestors encountered these fungi. Psilocybe cubensis thrives in the dung of grazing animals. Hunger led to discovery. McKenna was right on those points. But even so, the changes induced by psilocybin cannot be inherited genetically. If you learn to play the piano, your children will not be born pianists. If you achieve spiritual insight, it does not alter your DNA. McKenna suggested an evolutionary leap, but this would imply Lamarckian evolution, a concept firmly discredited over a century ago. Moreover, Fischer's research focused on perception, not evolutionary biology. McKenna extrapolated far beyond the original data, weaving a myth-like narrative, mythopoetic yet scientifically contested. And there is another problem. If psychedelics truly drove our cognitive evolution, cultures that use them should be the most technologically advanced. Yet the Aztecs, Mazatecs, and Amazonian tribes, no matter how spiritually profound, did not invent telescopes or satellites. Their evolution was not reactors and rockets. It was artistic, spiritual, symbolic. So yes, McKenna was likely wrong. But perhaps wrong in a deeply fascinating way. Today, some scholars propose an alternative model. Not genetic evolution, but cultural evolution. Mushrooms did not reprogram our DNA. They rewired our understanding. They didn't replace the hardware. They reconfigured the software. In that sense, they were more revolutionary than any biological mutation. Across cultures, the discovery of psychedelics led to music, mythology, sacred language. Communities constructed rituals and belief systems around shared visionary experiences. They architectured meaning out of the invisible. Maybe that's truly what mushrooms gave us. Not bigger brains, but bigger hearts, broader ideas. Today, McKenna's idea has evolved. Psychedelics did not create consciousness, but revealed it, like uncovering a secret feature in software you've used your entire life. And this fits contemporary science more compellingly. It explains why a single psychedelic journey can alter personality, boost creativity and empathy, and foster profound interconnectedness. Why every culture that discovered mushrooms revered them as sacred. Paul Stamets, the visionary mycologist, puts it clearly. We are still co-evolving with mushrooms, not genetically, but culturally. He's absolutely right. As we rediscover these compounds, society shifts again. Mental health care transforms, trauma therapy deepens, spiritual understanding expands. This new psychedelic renaissance is not medicinal in the conventional sense. It is about consciousness. Maybe McKenna asked the wrong question. It wasn't, how did mushrooms create consciousness? The real question is, what is consciousness? And why do mushrooms touch it so deeply? Modern science doesn't yet know. Decades of research have mapped neurons and synapses, but still can't explain how flesh becomes thought, feeling, dreaming. And yet, mushrooms have a way of speaking directly to our inner worlds, something that, after 1 billion years of separate evolution, still connects with the deepest fibers of being. Consciousness, if you think about it, is a sophisticated solitude. We are the only species aware of its existence and aware of its end. Perhaps that's why every culture that discovered mushrooms called them messengers, gods, doorways. Not because mushrooms made us human, but because they made us feel less alone, connected to something else, connected to something greater, connected to everyone. What if these mushrooms didn't just spark reflection, but rewired the way we relate to reality itself? For millennia, they've acted as mirrors for the soul, showing individuals the architecture of their own minds. In clinical studies, participants describe a sensation of accessing a hidden truth, something deeply personal, yet universally shared. The insights aren't random. They're patterned, coherent, often transformative. Perhaps it's not that psilocybin creates new realities, but that it gently pulls back the veil on the one we've ignored. A reality where consciousness is not confined to the individual, but is part of an intricate living network, ancient, aware, and always waiting. The Stoned Ape hypothesis may be wrong, but it forced us to reconsider consciousness and its emergence. It made us rethink our interconnection with each other and with the universe. A universe that might not be empty, but full of energy, meaning, mystery, compassion, and love. And whether you believe it or not, the Stoned Ape Theory changed everything. A spark burns within every human being. The need to understand who we are, where we come from, and where we are headed. This quest is anything but new. It has guided civilizations, inspired religions, and ignited revolutions. Yet in our modern age, this flame seems to have dimmed for many. We have achieved astonishing technological advancements, yet feel more disconnected from ourselves than ever before. Surrounded by noise and saturated with information, we often lose touch with our own inner voice. In this modern disconnection, many find themselves longing for something they can't name, a deeper truth, a lost memory, an ancient sense of belonging that science alone cannot fully explain. Where is the sense of wonder? Where is the direct experience of the sacred? Curiously, this spark could be rekindled by something as small as a mushroom. In ancient times, knowledge was never divided between science and spirit. It all belonged to a single, unified wisdom. Now, in the 21st century, that integration is quietly re-emerging, not out of nostalgia, but out of necessity. The revival of interest in psychedelics, especially psilocybin, within therapeutic and spiritual contexts, reflects a collective reaching toward what was once deemed forbidden. But this resurgence is not a passing trend. It signifies a deep yearning to remember what has been forgotten. Many traditions talk about a veil that obscures everyday reality, a filter preventing us from seeing beyond the obvious. In psilocybin experiences, people often describe this veil being lifted, revealing a broader dimension of existence. This is not escapism, it is reconnection. And it is not only an individual experience. A new form of community is taking root. People from all walks of life, different beliefs, diverse backgrounds, are coming together to share ceremonies, integrate insights, and build collective meaning. Through this process, the forbidden fungus stops being merely a substance. It becomes a symbol of return to the essential, to our roots. A living metaphor for everything modern culture has neglected. Silence, introspection, kinship with the earth, and intuitive wisdom. Awakening consciousness is no longer some remote myth, nor a mystical privilege reserved for a few. It is now a possibility in everyday life, but it demands intention, context, and respect. Medicine without ritual becomes empty chemistry. Symbol without comprehension remains shallow curiosity. Now more than ever, we need bridges between science and spirit, between tradition and future, between the individual and the collective. The forbidden fungus serves as one such bridge, not because it holds all answers, but because it helps us frame the right questions. What if consciousness is not a moment in ancient history, but an ongoing evolution? What if these expanded states are not anomalies, but subtle reminders of what we truly are when we release our fears? What if spirituality isn't in conflict with reason, but rather both are facets of the same greater intelligence? This new chapter in human history is not being written in laboratories or temples. It is being written in every choice we make, in every sincere search for meaning. And on that journey, some will turn downward, toward fertile soil, toward the kingdom of mushrooms, not as an escape, but as a mirror. Perhaps the greatest mystery lies not out there, but within ourselves. And if the mushroom serves any purpose at all, it is this: to remind us of what we have forgotten, to light the path toward a broader, more compassionate, more awakened consciousness. So before we close this story, this journey of ideas, ask yourself, which part of you remains dormant, and what are you ready to do to wake it? And that concludes our video. If you enjoyed the content as much as we did, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your feedback and suggestions for future videos. And don't forget to turn on notifications to stay up to date with all our updates. Thanks for being part of our community. See you in the next video.